Good morning, I'm Maiki Oreta, and you're watching Basis Points, where we dive deep into the numbers and the stories that drive our economy and shape our world. The headlines: the country's national debt rises to a new record high. The Ombudsman denies the appeal of Energy Regulatory Commission Chair Dimalanta to reverse her 6-month suspension. The Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines says it's prepared for the influx of travelers this long weekend. Meanwhile, government work and classes nationwide are half-day today in commemoration of All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day. And what will next week's U.S. elections mean for Asia? We'll discuss this with the head of the Washington office of stakeholder solutions firm, the Penta Group. First, to look at the financial markets, U.S. stocks closed lower with focus shifting to next week's presidential elections. The tech-heavy Nasdaq fell more than 8% as investors also braced for more earnings reports from mega-cap technology companies.
Last quarter, we really saw, some more scrutiny around, AI spend and sort of the path to, getting that return on investment from some of the hyperscalers. And so I think that, news from Alphabet last night, and hopefully some of the other Magnificent Seven companies that are really important for the earnings growth story for next year. Ultimately is, I think, the driving force of sort of investors sitting on their hands, and so goes the Mag 7, and so goes the market.
European markets also ended in the red as investors await the budget announcement of the UK's new Labour government. The Pan-European Stock 600 closed 1.2% lower, with the tech shares leading the losses at 2.4%. Here in Asia, the Asia-Pacific markets are down as investors look to the Bank of Japan's rate decision and key business activity figures from China. The Nikkei 225 falls 0.5%, the Kospi down 1.4%, and the S&P ASX 200 over in Australia is down by 0.2%. Now, in the commodities market, oil prices were slightly unchanged, trading at more than $2,700 a barrel. Gold, meanwhile, is up 0.5% at $73 an ounce. The country's national debt climbs to a new record high at 15.9 trillion pesos as of September, up by 2.2% from August. Year on year, that's a rise of 11.4% from 14.3 trillion pesos recorded at the end of September last year, reflecting the government's ongoing dependence on borrowing for public services and economic recovery. The Bureau of Treasury insists that this debt level remains manageable, with the majority, 68.8%, owed to local lenders, which lessens the exposure to the global market's volatility. Only 31.2% is foreign debt, making the government less susceptible to exchange rate risks. Additionally, favorable foreign exchange adjustments help lower overall external debt by 2.4 billion pesos, providing some relief. In other news, the Ombudsman denies the appeal of Energy Regulatory Commission Chair Dimalanta to overturn her 6-month suspension. Ombudsman Samuel Martirez says there isn't enough evidence to warrant a reversal of their previous order. Dimalanta was suspended in September for the alleged misconduct and abuse of authority when she approved Meralco's application for a power rate hike. Former Justice Undersecretary Jesse Andres has since been appointed as the officer in charge of the ERC. Now, the Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines says it's fully prepared for the expected influx of travelers this long weekend. Transportation Secretary Jaime Bautista conducted an inspection of CAAP's communications, navigation, surveillance, and air traffic management systems. He assures the public that all systems are fully operational to avoid any unexpected incidents. CAAP reports that airport facilities, including chillers and escalators, are in good working condition. They also confirm that contingency plans are in place to minimize potential flight disruptions due to inclement weather. Now, government work and classes at all levels nationwide will be half-day today in observance of All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day. Malacanang, however, says that agencies involved in essential services and disaster response will continue their operations. For private companies, work suspension will be at the discretion of their management. Meanwhile, the expanded number coding scheme is suspended today and tomorrow. We're taking a quick break. Please stay with us as we dive deep into the numbers and the narratives that matter most to your bottom line. Welcome back to Basis Points. Trading at the Philippine Stock Exchange opened just a few minutes ago. Let's take a quick look at the initial figures. Right now, 9:39 in the morning, and the PSE index is well entrenched in negative territory, down by 1.1% to 71.99. The broader all shares index is down by not down by as much, down by 0.5% to 39.74. Year to date, however, the PSE index is up by 13%, and year on year, we're up by 22%. Right now, we're trading at a PE ratio of about 14%. Now, analysts say what this means is that there's more room to grow. Now, analysts at Bloomberg say the elements of a rally are building up, and stocks are entering a historically strong season. We just need to power through the U.S. elections and then take direction from there. Now, at the foreign exchange market, the peso opens unchanged at 58.20 against the greenback. Now, we also just want to correct some figures that were on the screen earlier. Oil prices are trading at $73 a barrel, while gold is at more than $2,700 an ounce. Now, moving on, we're just days away from the U.S. presidential elections, the outcome of which will have far-reaching impacts. From economic policy to immigration, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris present very different visions for the future. So what might this mean for the Philippines? Joining us to discuss this and more is Brian De Angelis. He's the head of the Washington office at stakeholder solutions firm, the Penta Group. Hi, Brian. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having me. Okay.
They have this saying that when the U.S. sneezes, the world catches a cold. So the elections are going to be a super duper big deal. It's going to impact emerging markets like the Philippines through several channels. There's monetary policy, trade, foreign investment, currency, overseas remittances, and the general global risk appetite. I wanted to ask you, Brian, how might U.S. monetary policy shift under a Biden or Harris administration?
I think under a Harris administration, you'll see a continuation of Biden's policies, especially when it comes to monetary policy. She'll be fairly hands-off. She'll allow Chairman Powell and the Federal Reserve to do what they have to do to continue the fight against inflation and I predict continue to bring down interest rates. Former President Trump is a different story. He likes to be in control of everything. He thinks he should be in charge of everything and has a lot of trouble with the idea of independent agencies. But it's important that our Federal Reserve does have that independence, that it is free from politics. I'm afraid under President Trump, we'd see a lot of pressure on Powell and maybe whoever replaces Powell, as Trump has been known to really pressure people to leave those jobs because of the way he acts. So I'd be more worried about monetary policy under a President Trump.
Yeah, you hit it on the nail, Brian, when you said that with Harris, it's going to be a hands-off approach, whereas Trump, he really has been vocal about him being a successful businessman, entrepreneur, and how he should have a say in the Federal Reserve's decisions when historically it's been completely independent. So that is something to take into consideration. On another front, I wanted to talk to you about trade. Trump has signaled a return to protectionist policies. How might this impact Asia and the Philippines in particular?
I think it'll have a significant impact because it's not just a return to protectionist policies. It's really an adoption of very extreme protectionist policies. He's talking about 60% tariffs on goods from China and an across the board 10% tariff for almost any other trading partner. This will have a huge impact, I think, across the globe, but especially in Southeast Asia, as it'll be a huge disruption to the supply chain network there. A lot of countries that work with China and a lot of countries that import goods back to the United States. So it's going to have a ripple effect across the globe. It's going to hurt a lot at home here, too, for Americans.
Mm-hmm. There's a thought of who's going to be better for the U.S. economy, and then there's the global economy also. I mean, is there any win-win situation? With whether it's Trump or Harris, who's going to be better for the global economy and for the U.S. economy?
Yeah, it's a tough call because there are kind of issues on both of their economic agendas that will cause the business community a lot of heartburn. If I had to choose one, I would say Harris is probably the closest we would see to a win-win. I think she will work globally to continue to be a partner to our allies, to support global trade, while continuing some of Biden's policies and even some of Trump's policies around protecting certain industries against the advancements that China's making, that some of which we want to see done here at home in the US. I think likewise, as I mentioned with tariffs, that's going to have a huge impact on families' budgets here in the United States. They're going to feel that in their grocery stores, in their shopping, in their taking their kids to school supplies. It's going to hit a lot of their items, and that's going to feel a lot of pain. So if I had to choose, I'd probably say Harris is our win-win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with Trump, there are the fears of the trade war. That's going to be escalate, and it's going to ricochet everywhere else. On another front, regardless of who wins, it seems that both candidates suggest that they're going to be continuing deficit spending. That's going to put downward pressure on the dollar, which will help boost currencies all around the world, which have been so weak on strength on the U.S. dollar. How do you think this might positively impact the world? Their push, either way, whether it's Trump or Harris, to continue with the deficit spending?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Both candidates have really minimized any concerns about the deficit. They have pretty ambitious plans, whether it's Trump's interest in more tax cuts and continuing the tax reforms that he started as president in 2017, a lot of which expire this year. Harris likewise wants to see a lot of those individual taxes for families to continue, and she's also talking a lot about continuing some of the Biden work in investing in different industries in the U.S., certainly in the AI industry, and then certainly on energy, new clean energy, electric vehicles, et cetera. So both candidates, and this happens every campaign season, it's a lot more popular to talk about spending than saving, but that is going to continue to drive our deficits higher and higher, which has a global impact.
Mm-hmm. Now, on another front, remittances are a significant driver of growth for the Philippine economy. How might a Harris administration's focus on economic stability contribute to a predictable U.S. interest rate environment, and what effect might this have on remittance inflows?
Yeah, so I think you nailed it. She's going to be very predictable in her approach to this, and she's going to work with her foreign counterparts. She's going to be a true partner to folks. So I think issues like remittances and trade and others, you're going to see a much more collaborative president under Harris than you would see under Trump. Trump has a tendency not only to kind of think of tariffs as the tool to fix everything, but he also treats his allies not as friends, but really as people he can push around and squeeze a lot out of. And that can be tough when you're talking about some of these issues.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned the predictability, we mentioned the predictability of a Harris administration. This is not unique to Harris. It's unique to the Democrats in general, because as history tells us, emerging markets, including the Philippines, have historically performed better under a Democratic administration. Can you talk to us about, share your views on why this is so, if you believe in it even?
Yeah, I think there is some truth to that. I think, you'd have to look back well past Trump to see how that works with Republican presidents too. But I think what you're seeing is a lot more kind of common sense governing. It's working with allies. It's trying to work with Congress, not necessarily doing everything on a bipartisan basis. We are a pretty partisan government when it comes down to it, but you see a lot of effort, especially out of the last couple of Democratic administrations, to try to find a way to meet in the middle a little bit or try to work with allies on the world stage. The former President Trump again, we've said it a few times, but very much thinks he's the one that knows best. He's the only one that's right, and takes more of a bullying sort of approach to this, does what he wants to do, and that can be much more disruptive and unpredictable to businesses, to governments, to allies, to everybody who has to work with the United States on the world stage.
Final thoughts, Brian. Americans the world over are receiving their, if in the U.S. they're voting there or they're receiving their absentee ballots. Big decision ahead. In closing, what would you like to say to the voting population of America right now?
I would say get out and vote. I think this is one of the most important elections of certainly my lifetime, but I would say that's probably true of most American voters. It's going to be an extremely tight race. It could be decided by literally a handful of votes in just a couple of states in this country. So, protect our democracy, care about our democracy, exercise your right to vote, go out there and make your voice heard.
I think with the thoughts that you shared, Brian, Americans are going to be more confident with the decisions that they make, having heard from you. So thank you very much for joining us all the way from Washington.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
And that was Brian DeAngelis from the Penta Group sharing his insights on the possible implications of the U.S. elections. Now we're taking a quick breather. Basis Points will be right back. Welcome back to Basis Points. Now on to some earnings reports. Lower selling prices and rising costs weighed down the net income of Semirara Mining and Power Corporation, led by billionaire Isidro Consonji. Net income stood at 15.7 billion pesos from January to September, marking a 31% drop year on year. For the third quarter, the company's profit fell by 8% to 3.1 billion pesos. SMPC attributes the lower third quarter results to the seasonal impact of the rainy season on coal shipments and electricity prices. Looking ahead, the company expects coal and power costs to remain stable through the year end. Meanwhile, surge in enrollment boosts the earnings of STI Education Systems Holdings, led by billionaire Eusebio Tanco. The company's profit rose by 84% to 1.6 billion pesos for the fiscal year ending June 30th. STI Holdings also reported a 38% increase in gross revenues, reaching 4.7 billion pesos. This growth comes as total enrollment for the 2023-2024 school year jumped 27% to over 119,000 students. And that's it for Basis Points. I'm Maiki Oreta. We'll be back tomorrow for more news on the financial markets and more. Keep it here on BNC, the Billionario News Channel, always on top.